As if the situation in fertilizer markets wasn't bad enough, Union Pacific Railroad just told CF Industries, the largest producer of fertilizer in the country, that they needed to scale back their fertilizer shipments by 20% effective immediately. This comes right in the middle of the spring planting season for U.S. farmers. Now, when I saw this story, I didn't know what to make of it. And when I hear about a logistics or a supply chain issue, there is one name on YouTube that comes to mind, and I knew exactly who to call. All right, guys, we are here with Eric from Sage News. Eric, thank you for joining us. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
It's my pleasure. I've been meaning to have you on for a long time. I've been following your channel. And guys, if you don't follow Eric's channel, you should be following him, because when it comes to the supply chain and the logistics issues that we've all been struggling with for the last better part of a year and a half, nobody has covered it better than Sage News. So I highly recommend his channel. And I saw this article a couple of days ago, and when I saw it, I immediately thought of you, Eric, because I couldn't understand what was going on and why they would be doing this. And I thought you're the perfect guy to ask. But let me just give you a quick synopsis here of what's going on. I'm going to read the beginning of this article, and hopefully you can tell me just what on earth is going on here. This was in Zero Hedge, and it was dated 2 days ago. Black Swan event, top U.S. fertilizer producer hit with rail delays to the Midwest. And he says a fertilizer supply shock is imminent for U.S. farmers as CF Industries Holdings warned Thursday that rail shipments of crop nutrients would be reduced to top agricultural states, which couldn't come at the worst time as the Northern Hemisphere spring planting season is underway. World's largest fertilizer company said Union Pacific had hit it with railroad mandated shipping reductions that would impact nitrogen fertilizers such as urea, urea ammonium nitrate shipments to Iowa, Illinois, Kansas, Nebraska, Texas, and California, basically half the country. Union Pacific told CF Industries without any advance notice to reduce the volume of private cars on its railroad immediately. And this means that CF Industries had to decrease shipments by a whopping 20% to stay compliant. Now, I've been following the fertilizer story for a while now on my channel. And it's been mainly from a fertilizer supply chain perspective. You know, the energy crisis has been causing disruptions in production of fertilizer. This is the first time I've seen the shipment of fertilizer being an issue. And I cannot for the life of me understand why Union Pacific would do this, especially now come in and say you can't ship as much fertilizer, 20% across the board reduction in private cars. I mean, could you tell us a little bit about what that means and why they might be doing that?
Yeah, so we got a lot of things going on with the rail, right? Everything from attendance policies to the BNSF to a huge amount of containers that was needed to ship from the ports and get back and forth, and a lot of it went by rail. So, and of course, we have everybody's lovely favorite, labor shortages and things like that. So, a lot of the rails getting pulled in a lot of different ways because you only have so many rails and only so much movement on those rails. If you can't get containers unloaded, reloaded, and things like that, things just don't go. The rail moves a good portion of things like this because you can obviously move a lot more. So what it seems to me, and when I was talking to a lot of drivers, is they're doing knee-jerk reactions on where they feel they can move other things also, because you got either short supplied or short people to get these cars unloaded. I've had a lot of customers talking to customers that they can't even get spots on the rail. They're just for littler things too. So for me, I think we're dealing with a situation that supply chains work very well when they're consistent flows, right? When you start to have peaks and valleys, that is a supply chain's worst nightmare. It is based on consistency. And it sounds like a lot of this stuff is now, or a portion of it is based on the fact that they don't know how to handle these ups and downs. Okay. So they're pulling from here to pay Paul, and they're pulling from here to move this stuff. So unfortunately, some of the decisions that are being made aren't the right decisions, let's just say, right? We're learning how important management and it truly is nowadays. So that being said, I wanted to kind of, base that into sometimes it's not all that, but I am seeing a recurring thing that it just seems like a lot of the things that are happening is that larger companies went out and got their fertilizer. Let's say you're a big company, right? You're going to try to get your fertilizer off peak and you're going to get it knowing you're going to need it. Well, then those people are fine. Those are your top people that can afford to pay whatever price. I'm going to get my fertilizer. I'm going to get it now. It seems to be affecting a lot of the smaller firms and things that need this fertilizer to make this happen. And again, I'm not officially saying it, but it just seems like right now, if you don't have enough leverage to move it or tell these people to, hey, I want my stuff delivered, they don't seem to be catering to those people. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. It's one thing we've seen really since this mess started in 2020 is the little guys just get absolutely clobbered by whatever disruptions, where the bigger guys have a little more pricing power. They've hedged in markets. They've secured their supply chains months out. Plus, they have better access to credit markets so they can borrow to stay alive during tough times.
Right.
And the little guys just get smothered, and the big guys come in and gobble up market share.
Right. And the same thing, it's funny too, because some of the things we talk about, which I dove into a while ago, is they will pay you to not grow stuff on your property, right? They'll pay you money to bush hog it twice. When I lived in Tennessee, they would pay money to not grow crops on your property as long as you kept it cleaned, we call it bush hog, cut down to a certain thing. And for the longest time, I'm like, that makes no sense. Well, it makes sense technically, because then the big guys would rather pay you pennies to keep you from out doing any work, so that they can keep, they'll add that to the cost of their goods, right? So I think a lot of stuff, what we're seeing here is the railroad has to go where the money's at. They don't have to, but they're going to go where the money's at. So if they're going to reduce a little bit here to cater to somebody else someplace else. So we almost have to look as, okay, they're cutting this back. Who are they catering to? What are we moving? And that's something I'm going to actually dive into after this conversation so we can come back and I can kind of do a follow-up on this. Who's getting that reduction? Somebody is, if I'm not just reducing to reduce, right? I'm reducing to 20% to give somebody else 20%. And that's what we got to I'm going to help us track down is who's getting that additional 20% or 30%.
Yeah, that kind of stuck out at me when they mentioned private car placement was being reduced.
Right.
And I don't know enough about how rail works. There's private car placement? Is there some other type of car?
Yeah. So you've got a railroad. So you obviously have the railroad owns, the rails and stuff like that. So you'll have businesses that own cars, and you'll have, shipping containers are owned by, it's like shipping containers. I use them as easy reference. I can buy a shipping container to ship my goods, and that's one. Or a logistics firm can buy it, or the shipping companies can buy it, right? So there's various companies that can technically own containers. So when you're dealing with the private ones, it's something that is not, and you'll see like CF would have CF on their owned tankers, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm a chemical company, my chemical company name might be on that container or on that tank, or Schneider Logistics. You'll see their stuff on there. So that's who owns that. So the rail does not own that car. It's a privately owned car per se, right? So they're going to, obviously, I don't pay any type of service for filling yours. Let's say, I've, cut the cost of through ownership of that car. So to me, what it seems like is it's basically saying, look, I'm not coming. I'm having a hard enough time moving my own stuff, moving my own cars. So I'm going to have to back off your stuff and your cars, those privately owned ones that are either owned by logistics companies. And I'm using logistics companies as in the rail ones, but it's easier for people to understand, or owned by a chemical company itself. Those are privately owned cars compared to ones that are owned by the rail.
Okay. So it almost sounds like a spot market for moving rail cars around.
Right.
And they're saying we've booked so much of the other stuff and we're backed up, so we can't move as many of these freelancers or these open market cars. We just don't have room on our trains for them now. So you guys are going to have to ship less. And that CF Industries, I guess, is one of the main players in that private car market because they move so much material.
They do. I think they're one of the larger in regards to moving that type of like BNFS. BNFS moves a ton of like grains and stuff like that. And I don't quote me on this one completely, but I think I know they're one of the largest, if not the largest, for moving the tanker. That I'd have to look up, but I know they're up there and moving that type of chemicals and things like that. So it's all basically, comes back to, we have a huge amount of, things moving at high volumes, right? We're at peaks and valleys. And one of the things is the valleys are going to start to get lower as the peaks get higher. And that's the biggest problem, is that quick drops and ups and downs is what actually hurts us financially.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing, this volatility, is what we'll say in investment markets. Or, think of a machine that's vibrating, that's making a noise. Your car is starting to wobble, and you notice the wobble is getting a little bit worse the further you drive it, and the volatility gets a little bigger.
Right.
Swings like this always forecast some type of a breakdown or some type of a failure in whatever machine or mechanism is operating. In this case, it looks like it's rail transport. There's something really fundamentally wrong with our transport system right now.
It is. And a couple of things too is to remember is that trucks, the rail, customers want to move it by rail first. It's the most, feasible economically, right? They want it, but it takes longer. So if I don't need that to be a rush, stick it on the rail, I'll get it when I get it, but I'm going to save some money. When the rail can't take it or can't get it there, trucks take it. Now, trucks are more expensive. So that means they're going to have to basically pass that cost on to us, right? If things are used to go by rail and now they've got to go by truck, you're going to see the prices of those goods go up, because that fertilizer and those goods still have to go. But now we're going to be filling tanker trucks with it. And instead of one train moving 150 loads, you're going to have to pay 150 trucks. So that how we're going to feel that, how that's going to come to us, it's not that it's not going to completely get moved. It's going to be a higher cost because it's going to be a higher price to logistically move it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
okay.
All roads lead to things getting more expensive these days. That's just one more thing that's going to drive this inflation narrative. And, you mentioned trucks there. I did see in another article written on this topic with CF Industries and Union Pacific that CF is one of the biggest producers and shippers of DEF, the diesel fluid that the big trucks need. So this could impact the movement of things on truck eventually, or make trucking even more expensive.
Yeah, the DF is what the trucks use in regards to the fuel EPA rules, right? To basically make the trucks run cleaner. And there has already been a shortage on that, because one of the chemicals in that DEF is urea. And urea is also a fertilizer that's used. So we're at a place that, you got to kind of balance that effort on. We need it to grow the food, but we need it to ship the food. So we're at that crossroads in regards to, how do we handle this? So it's a lot of, these are the times where you really got to sit down and say, okay, there's a lot of things that are going to be going up in price. We're going to be hitting summer months. You're going to start to see food that has to go. Produce season, it has to go, or it gets rotten. Those prices are going to be, higher, because I'm going to have to pull trucks out of the market to put them on the food. So to do that, you have to pay more. And that's another aspect of, so we're just coming into the heightening of the freight industry, right? You got January, December, everybody's buying. And then January, stores, normal times, of course, stores are usually replenishing. February and March, it starts to die down. April, April showers bring trucking Mayflowers. You start to have trucking kick off in May, June, July, because, that type of stuff. We're just starting to hit where trucking should be peaking again. And trucking is technically going down. So there's a lot of these peaks and valleys that if the trucking pricing goes down long enough for trucks to be knocked out of the market, and rail is now already too packed, we're going to see a huge pop to pull all that stuff back together again, because I'm going to have to, for me to try to find a truck, I'm going to have to pay even more money than I did just 6 months ago to try to get that truck, because there's less trucks out there. So it's these ups and downs is when we actually want to be kind of watching this stuff. And of course, the other aspect where I take is not keep you forever, but is the amount of time it's taking for customers to pay. When a customer used to go from 21 days to 45 days to now 60 days, they're still under my realm of 90, but you can start to see customers pay slowing. And that's always been a big indicator for me that trouble waters ahead. How quickly you pay your bills, just like you. If it takes you
Absolutely.
longer to pay a credit card off, it's probably because you don't have the money that you were having when you first get, let's say we're paying it quicker. So that's, to me, when customers start to do that on the level that I'm moving, it's an indicator for me.
Thanks. Appreciate that, Sage. And real one last question while I have you here. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the situation going on Shanghai, Shenzhen. Starting to see the pictures of the marine traffic with the boats sitting outside, just
Yep.
like we saw with LA and Long Beach last year, but seemingly 100 times worse. What does that look like for this situation 3 months from now, 6 months from now? What do you see happening?
This is the situation too with regards to that. Like, they always have done a ton. I mean, thousands and thousands of freight compared to us. I mean, I can't even compare. But it's the amount of, so you would normally have a lot of ships there, but it's the amount of time that those ships are waiting, which is a problem, right? Their ports have been are a lot more innovated, a lot faster moving, 24/7 and stuff like that. But the issue is they're shut down, right? I mean, they have approximately, and depending on who you ask, 27 million truck drivers out there, where we have approximately 5. So they have right now, there have been anywhere, depending on, again, who you asked, they have somewhere around, I'm going to say on average, 5 to 10 million truck drivers shut down. Our entire country worth of truck drivers over there are shut down, not bringing goods to the port because nobody can move. They can't get into the port. These ships are waiting on that. Well, the issue is once that starts to rock and roll and they start flying, there's no way, and ships start going, there's no way to keep up. And one of the videos I did, this morning was, so now ships are starting to bypass them that have refrigeration goods because there's no place to run the refrigerated units, the refrigerated containers, and things like that. So now ships are starting to skip that port. So you have ships that are sitting there and ships that are skipping this port. In a couple months, we could see a huge fluctuation at our ports of things trying to get the same situation we were just in. And the only way to get the stuff off the port is to raise logistics. And logistics touches everything twice. You got inbound traffic and outbound traffic. So if you raise shipping, that raises inflation. It's one of the main thing that's going to affect absolutely everything is shipping. And I see prices going up to try to keep up.
So it sounds like one more example of what you said, where maybe we're in one of these troughs right now because of everything being frozen in place in China, but
Right.
the logistic wants that smooth operating level. And since we're shutting down now, that's going to make the peak even worse a few months from now.
Correct.
More volatility, more swings. Wow.
Correct. And then that's, again, and that's, I guess sometimes people say that's good if you know where the top and the bottom is in the stock market, but it's not so good in the trucking industry because trucks drivers go out of business, which cause, a higher pricing for the trucks that are out there. And next thing you know, we're paying more for food.
Well, Sage, I really appreciate your insight and your knowledge of the supply chain. It's second to none. By far the best channel on YouTube for logistics issues, folks. I highly recommend it. I'm going to put a link in the description down below to Sage News. Check out his channel and subscribe. Any final words, Sage?
No, just thank you for having on. And like I tell everybody, just prepare for that winter storm. What would you do in that winter storm? Get an extra thing here, extra thing there. And just, like I said, keep watching the channels. If I see it, you'll see it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Sage. And everybody else, until next time, live small and dream big.